Rachel, tell us a little bit about what 2022 was, just some highlight really of what the Lord's been doing.
I'm about to retire, as I think most of you know, from looking after people's feet. And God actually told me that that was what He wanted me to do. That was 22 years ago. So God doesn't always speak to us in ways that we think that He's going to. He doesn't always speak to us through the Bible, but His Holy Spirit reveals things to you, or coincidences. Too many coincidences can happen in your lives for it to just be a coincidence. And I just felt that still small voice 22 years ago in my head saying chiropody or chiropodist. I can't remember what the word was now, it's too long ago and I'm getting older and older.
You're very good, Rachel. Do mine.
So I knew that God wanted me to be a witness for Him, talking to people, showing Him by the way that I was doing everything that I do as if to the Lord. And I've had many opportunities to talk to people of the Lord, here a seed, there a seed. But then Dave was getting a bit fed up and lonely, so we got a cat. That was 3 years ago. But he was getting more and more fed up being on his own, and he wanted some quality retirement. So he started going on to me, when are you going to retire? And then my family started. And then he was working on my family. Yes, I know that. They told me. So I thought, well, but I'm doing the Lord's work. I'm still talking to people. I'm still helping them when they're in pain, or doing whatever needed to be done to their feet. Sitting there talking for about an hour per patient, seeing them every maybe 3 weeks, as in your case, or maybe every 6, as in yours, Vicky. So I thought, how am I going to know when it's time? And so I dithered. Anyway, I went to a conference, a seminar, Buckfast, back in November. You know what's coming, don't you, darling? I went to the conference and I went with Tina, I went with another Christian lady and another chiropodist who I didn't know. We had a good time together. And I'd said that I had a few things for sale, my PPE, because I had far too much. I only needed another about 4 to 5 months worth. So I thought, right, with the aprons, no problem, they can all go. Because we didn't have to wear them anymore. The gloves I still have to wear. And then I thought the masks. Well, I'd ordered far too many masks. I made a mistake with the order, but I mean, they were enough to last for years. So I got them all out anyway. And I thought, I asked one of those girls, Tina actually, some of you probably know Tina, who used to fellowship with us. So I said to Tina, would you like to buy some masks? Oh yes, she said, I'll have a couple of boxes, and there's other girls who would like some. Then she texted me back, and she says, actually, I'll take the lot. So I said, okay, I'll tell you when I see you when we go, because I don't know how many I'll need. So I thought, well, how many am I going to need? So I worked it out, I had 75 working days left. So I got the masks out and I found 2 half-opened packs for some reason. I've got no idea. I usually do 1 pack at a time, but for some reason I had 2 half packs. So I thought, well, I can't sell them. I counted them out, and guess what I'm going to say? There were 75 masks. And it's just a confirmation from the Lord. Another coincidence. That's my 2022.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thank you. Anybody else want to? Can somebody else want to? Yes, Jessica, come on up. Oh, Joel's coming to you. 1 second. Come on, that's fine. Come on up. So, might like just to introduce yourself as well for those who won't know. Have a seat.
Yeah, a lot of people won't obviously know me, but obviously I'm Jessica. And the thing is, I obviously come from Wales. I come up here to stay with the respite family. And God's been good over the last few years. What it was about 3-4 years ago, I was homeless, completely hooked on drugs and alcohol, completely quite a mess, quite not good. And then I managed over the last couple of years getting to a bed sit with staff looking after me, and they've been really good to me. Now, not the year just gone, but the year before, I kind of got off drugs and alcohol, but the problem was I harboured a secret, and the secret was that behind people's backs I was still doing the drugs and alcohol, and I kind of, it damaged me because I was lying to myself. Well, the year just gone, the year just gone, I've actually was truthful with myself, and I've gone the whole year not once doing drugs or alcohol. And it's the first time in my life since from early age I've gone completely a year without doing drugs and alcohol. You know, God's been good to me. I stay with a really nice respite family, and they look after me, and they're really good to me. And obviously that opened the door to come here, because it was really mad how I got to this church. Because one day, one Sunday, not this time, when I last came up to Bodmin, one Sunday I was there and I was looking for churches to come to, and I was just flicking through my phone, and then I found this church and I was like, oh, this looks good. Wasn't even looking for it. And then it was like, yeah, I'll come along, and there's been a few people here, the two there, that lady there, there's been a few people who have really welcomed me, really been good to me. So I don't feel it was a coincidence me coming to this church. I thought God had a hand in that. I came to Skillshare the other week and met a lot of nice people. I know I'm not around a lot because, like I say, my life is in Wales, but obviously when I do come down to Bodmin, which is not regularly, I do try to kind of like come here when I can. But obviously when you're like 5 hours on a train away and
Fair point, we understand.
And you're away, it's really difficult to come. But it's nice that when I am down in Bodmin, I've got a place that I can go home and come to. You know, and it's nice to have a welcoming church that I find that I found, because obviously being transgender, when you obviously come to an environment, it can go either way. I mean, it can go to the way that no one wants you, or people are accepting you. And like I was saying to the gentleman I was talking to earlier, I haven't really mingled around and spoken to too many people because of all my situations and that. I get really nervous, and it's like I would rather things happen naturally and people come and speak to me and get used to me, because obviously when you come down to somewhere like Bodmin, the LGBTQ community is not as big as say Cardiff, so it's like there's probably people that have never seen transgender, so it's kind of like it can be quite new to people. And obviously when I'm out in the community in Bodmin, I do get upset because it's not people being nasty, it's just people not used to it. And it's like, I tried obviously doing my HRT, and at the moment it's not happened. And like I was saying to the gentleman earlier, I was saying, well, at the end of the day, it's not it's off the table, it's just not happening at the moment. And I've had to lay it in God's hands, and I've had to say, God, if this is your will be done. And you do it in your time, your season. And it's like with my life, from getting off the streets and the way things have happened, it's all been in God's timing, in God's season. And what I say to people with my testimony and with what I've done, don't rush things, just trust God, and God will do it in His time and in His season when the time's right. Because I just give it to God and say to God, I give my life to you. May your will be done. You do it when it's the right time, the right season, the right moment. Do you know what I mean? And you can't push God. You've got to let God do it in His timing. And it's
That's
about
very true.
trust and faith. And you've got to have that trust and faith in God. You know, God will do it in my timing. I never expected to get off the streets and have the life I'm having now, but God was obviously gracious to me, and I'm very humble to God. And I can't thank God enough for what He's done, because He's done a lot in my life. And I can't thank Him enough, because of obviously, like, you know, He's given me a whole new lease of life. I've now got a roof over my head. It was my first Christmas this year. I'm 40, and it was my first Christmas this year since the age of 8 that I've been in a family nice Christmas environment. And God's opened that door, and He does open doors, and you just got to trust Him. And it's about putting that faith and trust in God, and that's what I say to people, my testimony. I don't tell my testimony for brownie points or people to feel sorry for me. I tell my testimony to show people how much God's been faithful and what God's done, because it's not about me, it's about God.
Amen.
And I give praise to God for what He's done, because it's not my story, it's what God's done for me.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. They're just the messages that are coming through about trusting God and His timing as well, and as we seek Him. Yeah, John.
Each day or each morning, I pray for one of my family that maybe this week one of them will come to church with me or come to Christ. And about 3 months ago, out of the blue, I got some news. I have a younger brother, and he's a good lad. There's similarities with me. I had serious drink problems, and I have a friend in Manchester, and she's the widow of a lad I was at school with. And I went to her funeral about 2 years, to his funeral 2 years ago, and I keep in touch with her. I phone her monthly, and I've been praying for one of my family to go to church, and she said, I saw your Alan last Sunday. That's my younger brother. And I thought, well, Mads don't go into pubs, and, you know. And I said, where did you see him? She said, he came to church. And there's me praying for the church down, the family down there. And I said, you're joking? No, he's started coming to church. And Alan has an aversion to, he can answer a phone, but he can't phone out. No,
I know a few people like that.
He can't. And so I phoned him up. And I said, oh yeah, Alan, have you started going to church? Oh, he said, yeah, I am. I said, how did that come about? He said, well, my daughter wanted to get married in the church we went to as kids. And she went to see the vicar. And he said, well, you can't just walk in here, you've got to do 5 or 6 weeks. And her husband-to-be is a fireman, and he couldn't get time off to go to church. So she said to Alan, I want to go to church. And he said, I'll take it. So he took her to church for the 6 weeks. And then on the 7th week, he thought, I'll go myself. So now he went, and his wife goes. So really what it's all about is you pray for something to happen, and it's just not happening. And then all of a sudden, it's fantastic. And that was the best Christmas present, well, you could ever have.
Brilliant.
Yay.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Anybody else want to share a little something?
I will.
Yeah, can't you?
Oh. Sorry, it seems to always be.
That's all right. Go for it.
We're talking about God taking his time. I've been with my partner, and I love him to bits, for 20 years. We've never married. On Christmas Day this year, he asked me to marry him. We're going to Alicante to get married, because he doesn't like crowds. But then we're going to have a big party, and everybody here today, I would love them to be at my wedding.
Have you told Ben that yet or not?
You haven't met his friends yet. But, so God doesn't always do things right away. It's like my daughter, that's coming very slowly, but it's still carrying on. But if you're patient and you pray and have faith, then eventually good things happen. And I feel very, very blessed that two really good things happened to me last year and now going into this year. It's going to be the future. So that's what I'm
Terrific.
saying.
Ah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. We've got time for one more if anybody else would like to add anything. If not, yeah, it's gone. Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, so this is a bit of a story of a bit of, I suppose, a mission on my part. I went into Launceston, just to go and look around Launceston Castle, as you do. And I finished looking around the castle and I went up into the town to do a little bit of shopping. And I passed one street and I saw up this street a lady with 3 children. And she was shouting at her children. And I thought, ooh, I don't fancy going up that street. I'll go up another street. So I went round and sort of, bypassed all that. And I was in this shop and she came in with her 3 children. And she was looking anxious. She was still having a go at the children, but there was something wrong. And I sort of passed by and I went outside and it was raining. So I took shelter underneath this awning. Now she came with the children, she was standing right next to me. And I thought, well, there's something wrong and I can see that it's not just that she's a bad mother. There's something that's really troubling her. And the thing that really got to me was the fact that I didn't do anything about that situation. So it was, I suppose I'm looking forward now to 2023, thinking, what would I do differently? I think it's just a question of, getting involved in people's lives if you see God prompting you to do that. I think that's something that I'll take forward with me into this year.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I just want to give us a couple of little thoughts at this point, just to lead us into 2023, nothing more than that. But what I want to do is just highlight this little verse. And this comes from 1 Kings. So Solomon has just built the temple. So if you remember, David wants to build a temple. God says, no, Solomon, your son will build it. Solomon builds the temple. I've got to stand up to speak. I don't know why, but I've got it. But Solomon dedicates the temple. And this is what he says. But will God really live on earth among people? Why, even the highest heavens cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built. And just thinking of Christmas and that whole idea that there's this almighty God who becomes this little baby. And then thinking about our situation, there's this almighty God who makes the universe, and yet, as we just heard, is intimately interested in the number of face masks in a box, or intimately interested in whether we're on the streets or whether we're in that family setting, or what our relationships are like, or how he might use us in those contexts. And Solomon says, God, can you even live on earth because you are so huge? And I just think today's been an incredible witness to that as well. Okay, so one deep theological thought: God is big. Okay, that's your deepest thought as we go into 2023. But also notice what came out in those testimonies was one of patience and one of being prepared to continue, that thought of praying, that thought of being open. And I know many of us are praying for particular situations, particular people, particular circumstances where we long to see God move. And I hope we've had encouragement in what we've heard, in what's been said. What I'd like you to do is, there's some Bibles on the table. We're going to have a little look at a little bit more of what Solomon says. We're going to just have a look at 1 Kings 8, 54 to 61. 1 Kings 8, 54 to 61. If somebody would like to shout out a page number when you find it. You're all in the green Bibles, I think. 1 Kings 8, 54 to 61 is what we're going to read.
346.
Thank you. 346 in the green Bible, if you got that one. All right. Would somebody like to read that for us? In somebody else's voice rather than mine. Just pass the microphone to somebody who'd be happy to read that for us. Please. Thank you. 1 Kings 8, 54 to 61 goes like this.
When Solomon had finished all these prayers and supplications to the Lord, he rose from before the altar of the Lord, where he had been kneeling with his hands spread out towards heaven. He stood and blessed the whole assembly of Israel in a loud voice, saying, "Praise be to the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed of all the good promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us nor forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him, to walk in obedience to him, and keep the commands, decrees, and laws he gave our ancestors. And may these words of mine, which I have prayed before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, that he may uphold the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel according to each day's need, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God, and that there is no other. And may your hearts be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands, as at this time."
Thanks very much. Just to highlight a couple of those verses. The first one, may the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us nor forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep the commands, decrees, and laws he gave our ancestors. Just want to emphasize one verse here, that one part of that verse, and that is, may he turn our hearts to him. You know, if we seek to follow Jesus, if that's what we're committed to, even if we're exploring faith and really working out what that means for us ourselves, the fact is that Solomon's prayer is, may God turn our hearts to him. If you struggle, and we all struggle to follow Jesus, then we need to remember as well that God is at work, drawing us to himself, turning our hearts towards him, giving us those moments of insight. We think, actually, he is real, he is faithful, and he is there, never leaving us nor forsaking us. Remember, as we go into 2023, that God draws us to himself. Secondly, this, and may these words of mine, which I have prayed before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God, day and night. It's a fascinating little insight into prayer, maybe one we don't think about often, but it's almost like Solomon says, I'm going to deposit these prayers, and I pray that they just become that little voice that just keeps saying to the Lord, this is what we want, this is what we want, this is what we want. And you know what struck me so clearly in seeing this is also this, that God looks to ask us what we want. Now, I'm not saying about praying for a Mercedes or whatever else we want, but I'm talking about God actually wanting to partner with us, and he will listen to our prayers, and we've heard demonstration of that today as well. An interesting perspective on prayer, that we can deposit that prayer. We can say, Lord, would you work? And many of us pray daily for various circumstances. We've heard of answers to prayer in what John said today. Let's keep up that prayer, and I know others have got testimony, people smiling at me, and I know full well what you're smiling at me about, as we've known God's faithfulness, which is awesome. And then this one. And may your hearts, this is the final little verse to focus on, and may your hearts, he prays, be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands at this time. You know, God may draw our hearts to him, but this is our part, that we need to know his decrees and laws and to live by them. That's why we do church, that's why we do house groups, that's why we fellowship together, to learn what those things are and to seek to live them out and to be encouraged by them. And today's a great example of that. You know, that sense of community as we come together, having had a little break with last week, and that joy of seeing one another again. And then we come together and we encourage one another and we share stories of what God is doing. And when I'm like, but Lord, I'm praying for people and I'm not seeing that breakthrough, I'm like, but I remember that John did see that breakthrough. And I'm encouraged. And when I see somebody crying in some street and I think I'm not going up that one, what a great line. I'm going to think, but maybe Lord, what are you calling me to? Because I'm going to remember what Nigel said. You know, we learn from each other, not just in what is taught and what is preached, but we learn from each other and what we're inspired to see of God doing in each other's lives. So 3 little thoughts. First off, God draws us to himself. Even when we mess up, God draws us back again. You know, if you fall off the bike as a child, what do? We kick him and we say, you pathetic little child, get off, you can't ride a bicycle. Now we pick the child up. Well, hopefully you didn't do that. You pick a child up, you put them on the bike, and you say, let's try again. And that's our God. Whatever's gone before, he picks us up, says, 2023, let's go for it again. And then Solomon's prayers were going to remind God of what he prayed. Let's be persistent in our prayers. You know, we long to see God move in this town and our surrounding area. We've seen evidence of that in the last year, which we rejoice in, but we want to see more, don't we? So we continue to pray and to ask him to be at work. And finally, know our part as well. We need to be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and laws. It's hard work, but we come together to encourage each other to do that. Let's stand. We're going to worship together just with a couple of songs, just to commit to this year, as simple as that.